Hi, everyone. I'd like to begin by sharing a story with you. Picture this. I have 16-year-old identical twin daughters, and 8 years ago, when they were 8, their molar teeth fell out on the same day. Now, I don't know about in your house, but in my house, according to tooth fairy currency, there's a higher monetary value associated with molars than there is with little lowly milk teeth. So bearing that in mind, my children went and deposited their teeth in their slippers with great excitement, expecting a visit from the tooth fairy during the night. And the next morning, as they skidded towards their slippers, they found their teeth still in the slipper because I'm embarrassed to admit the tooth fairy had forgotten. And she did not just forget the first night, she forgot the second, third, and fourth night. By which stage you can imagine, I felt like the worst mother imaginable. And on the fourth morning, while I was brushing my teeth, one of my daughters came up to me and she touched me on my arm. And she looked at me with the saddest little face you'd ever seen. And she said to me, "Mommy, I don't believe in the tooth fairy anymore." And this was a painful reminder of how mindless life had become. It was Monday, then it was Friday. It was Monday, then it was Friday. I looked at my daughters and they were 8, and I thought, how did they get to be 8? If you think of us this year, it's already nearly March. Doesn't it feel like it was Christmas the other day? And at about the same time as this tooth fairy incident happened, there was a story that hit the news headlines, which really resonated. And you may remember it. There was a UCT lecturer called Andrew Wilkinson, who unexpectedly had to take his 18-month-old son to school. His name was Janosh. And as he put the little boy into his car seat, the little boy fell asleep. And normally every day his wife took the child to school, and this was unexpected because his wife had a meeting. Anyway, because the child was asleep and Andrew was so busy thinking about his day, his to-do list, and how busy and hectic he was, that he drove straight past the nursery school. He arrived at UCT, he parked his car, he got out and he went on about his day, forgetting about his little boy at the back. 3-4 hours later, when the alarm was raised, they rushed to find the little boy dead in the back of the car. 46-degree temperatures had caused his death. Andrew Wilkinson paid the ultimate price for mindlessness. So what is mindfulness? Why did Time magazine feature it 2 weeks ago on the front cover, and they called it a game changer for leadership? I believe mindfulness is your full attention. It's your full attention to the present moment. Now, it sounds like a cliche, but the reason why the present is called a present is because it's a gift. And the problem is we actually spend very little time in the present moment. I bet you a lot of you are thinking about your build-up of emails, what are you having for supper tonight, when in actual fact the only moment that we have control over is this sweet spot of the 25th of February, 2014. This is the day that we have the capacity to perform at our peak. And the problem is we spend half of our time feeling guilt and regret about the past and worrying about the future. And we're missing out on the present moment and becoming increasingly mindless. Now, why do you think companies like Apple, Google, Facebook, the Huffington Post are increasingly teaching their leaders and their employees strategies to become more mindful? Because they know that your brain is actually like a cup. And that implies that your cup gets full. And unless you have some mechanism to actually empty your brain, you are not going to be able to think strategically, and you're not going to be able to have new thoughts. And mindfulness is one of those techniques that actually makes some space in your brain. And they know, especially the technology companies, they know they need staff and leaders who are on the top of their game. They need to be able to empty their brains so that they are innovative, they are creative, they are constantly staying ahead of the pack. Now, what I'd like you to do now is we're going to do a quick brain exercise, and I'd like to give you one tip or one insight into the science behind mindfulness. Why is this so important? So could you bear with me? I'd like you to raise your hands, and I'd like you to imagine your brain as your hand. So this is high neuroscience we're doing here. Right, now what I'd like you to do is imagine your palm as your limbic system. This is the emotional seat of your brain. And then I'd like you to fold your thumb in, and that represents your primal reptilian brain. That's where your fight and flight response happens. And then what I'd like you to do is close your fingers over your brain, like that. Now that effectively is what your brain looks like, obviously a little bit bigger. Right, you can put your hands down, thank you. Now to carry on this analogy, your fingers represent your prefrontal cortex. Your prefrontal cortex is where your high-level decision-making happens. It's what distinguishes us from animals. Now, what they found is that we all get triggered. Living in Johannesburg, sorry, Jeff. Living in Johannesburg, we get triggered by traffic. I'm sure a lot of you were even triggered this morning. Taxis, stress, deadlines, etc. And what happens when we are triggered is our prefrontal cortex literally flips its lid and exposes your reptilian brain. When you become more mindful, you are able to re-engage your brain and become a rational, decent, kind human being. Ladies and gentlemen, when you're at the meeting, be at the meeting. Don't be on your phone underneath the table. When you're driving, be conscious of driving from point A to point B. And when you're with your children, be with your children. Thank you, everyone.